The United Front meant unity among workers. The Popular Front was a dramatic change in policy brought about in the 1930s by the Communist Party. It was the call for unity between working class parties and capitalist political parties, as Miguel said, to unite with them within the accepted framework of the capitalist state. Not only that, but to aim at strengthening those capitalist states, to strengthen the capitalist states, to vote up their war budgets, meaning, therefore, to strengthen the military, which is always, of course, a bulwark of the right wing. And this was done with the argument, as Miguel suggests, that this was going to be good in the long run, that this fit into some longer-term revolutionary strategy. But that did not happen. Why did the Popular Front rise? It developed as a strategy after the failure of the Communist Party's strategy in Germany. In Germany, as you may know, in the period from 1928 to 1935, to 1933 in Germany, the Communist Party pursued the policy of attacking the Social Democrats, calling them social fascists. And the Communists and the Socialists fought two huge labor parties, great in the sense of massive political organizations, tremendous mobilization in the grassroots, powerful labor unions, and they fought each other and opened the door to Hitler. And that was Stalin's policy, the Communist Party policy carried out in Germany, brought that about. As a result of that, the coming to power of Hitler, as it should have, terrified the working people of Europe, terrified many people in many social classes in Europe. Would what had happened in Italy, would what had happened in Germany also be extended to France, to England, to other countries? What was going to happen? What could be done about Hitler? So there was, I would say, a kind of movement from the grassroots, from the base of the people of Europe who said, we must unite to defeat fascism. There's no doubt about that. They wanted to unite, particularly in the labor movement. Workers wanted to find allies with their brothers and sisters in other organizations, and they recognized that would be necessary to confront Hitler. However, the Communist Party's logic for following this was different. That is, the Communist Party's argument had to do with Joseph Stalin was calling the shots. He was the head of the Communist International. He was determining what happened in all of the national communist parties. Their goal was to stop fascism, from Stalin's point of view, to defend the Soviet Union. Now, the argument might be right. I applaud, and applauded a moment ago, the Russian Revolution of 1917, the Great Russian Revolution, a workers' revolution, the first time that workers took power. However, in that Russian Revolution, that revolution became beleaguered very early on. And by the 1927s, that revolution, surrounded by foreign enemies, facing starvation, and so on, found itself in a position was possible for Joseph Stalin and others in that state to carry out a counter-revolution. All the institutions of workers' power were done away with in the Soviet Union. The Soviets disappeared, the workers' councils. The trade unions became completely subordinated to the Communist Party. There was no democracy in the Soviet Union. What was interesting for Stalin, what he wanted to do, was to defend the Russian state, now the Soviet state, and he wanted to defend that state and its emerging ruling class, its emerging ruling bureaucracy, its elite, of which he was the head. To defend Russia, he would have to stop Hitler. How could he stop Hitler? He realized that to stop Hitler, he would have to have an alliance with the Western capitalist countries, with the Western imperialist nations. And particularly, he was interested in an alliance with France and England. To get that alliance, he would have to move to make alliances for the first time in the history of the revolutionary socialist movement, breaking with the tradition of that revolutionary socialist movement, to make alliances with petty bourgeois parties, called in France the Radical Party, and as Miguel said, even with the capitalists, with anyone who would be against fascism. So we have, and the classic case of this, I think easier to discuss than other places in particular, is to discuss France. Now in France, there's another thing taking place, I should mention. In most of these nations, there's an incipient fascist movement in each of these nations. So you have pro-fascist riots, or very right-wing riots in any case, in 1934 in France. This brings the socialists and communists out in a mass demonstration. And many people who marched on that day were afraid that the communists would come and there would be a fight between the socialists and communists, as it happened in Germany. But the communists had changed their position. The communists and socialists marched together. People sang the Internationale and the Marseillaise together in all of those parties. And it seemed like a tremendously wonderful day for the French working class. It opened up the opportunity for the alliance between the communist and the socialist parties and the radical parties, who, as you know, formed an alliance, elected a new government to govern France, the Popular Front government, under Léon Blum in 1936. That government, that election, gave tremendous hopes to the working class. The French working class, seeing this change in policy, afraid of Hitler, wanting to take advantage of what seemed a change, a move to the left in government, strikes suddenly broke out all over France, organized by various leftists in the plants. The communists and other historians all say these were rather spontaneous strikes, which only mean they were organized by grassroots activists in those plants. And the workers took over the factories throughout France. They occupied those factories. They held the factories. And in the end, the employers were forced to recognize those workers and to grant to the workers, under an agreement reached through the Popular Front government, a 15% wage increase, a 40-hour week, a 2-week vacation, and under the employers' insistence, worker delegates in the factories to make decisions about things in the factories. The employers hoped it would bring in some more right-wing workers by creating workers' delegates. This all that then got ratified in socialist legislation put through by that government. This is what everyone remembers as the great heroic movement of the Popular Front. This is that moment in the Popular Front. Socialists, communists, the radicals come together, the workers occupy the factory. It seems to be a tremendous victory for the left. What happens, however, is different. There's a great debate at this moment between two people. Touré, who's the leader of the Communist Party, has said to the workers, one has to know how to end a strike. You have to know how to end the strike, to reach an agreement, and to leave the factories. And communists and socialists organize getting those workers out of those factories as soon as possible and getting those agreements instituted. And it is still, no doubt, a tremendous victory for the workers. A left socialist named Marceau Pivert said this. He said a different slogan. He didn't say one has to know how to get one has to know how to end a strike. He said everything is possible. Now, I think Pivert was probably wrong. Everything wasn't possible. But much more was possible than what was done. One has to wonder that the Communist Party organized these workers to leave the plant. Why did they want to end the strike? Why did they want to make sure this reached these national accords? Why didn't they want to push that strike to the next stage? Because they wanted unity with the French bourgeoisie. If they supported the workers to go any further, in other words, did they call for workers' committees in the factory to control those factories? Did they make demands for the nationalization of certain industries? Not at all. They did not call for workers' power in the factories. They didn't call for nationalization. Did they call for strong controls on the economy? No, they didn't. They wanted to end the strike because they didn't want to break that alliance with the bourgeoisie. So the essence of the politics was that the working class in France was brought in and subordinated to an alliance with the capitalists, as happened in every other country where this kind of alliance was made. And at the same time, of course, is this any victory for the workers of Russia? Because in this whole process, Stalin also succeeds between 27 and 37 in consolidating the power of the new ruling bureaucracy in the Soviet Russia. So we have a double defeat for the working class. We have the victory of fascism in Western Europe. We have the victory of Stalinism with the Stalinist totalitarian state. I don't think anybody here, I don't think Miguel is here to defend Stalin, I know that. But that Stalin state is created. And we have a double defeat for the working class that comes out of the Popular Front. So this is a tragedy for the European working class to have pursued this Popular Front. What was the alternative? The alternative was to build an independent, revolutionary workers' movement that would have challenged for power. If it had been possible, if you can carry out a workers' revolution, you can build a state that has a tremendous new power. Look what happened in Russia after 1917 when you had a workers' revolution, where you can call on the power, the creativity, the unity, the dynamism of workers and peasants and intellectuals and middle-class people who are attracted to the revolutionary movement. You could turn Russia into a state strong enough to defend itself against foreign invasions. Could France have done that? Could Spain have done that? We can't go back and we can't say. But I think that would have been better than to see a second war like World War I, a second war for the redivision of the planet, a second war in which the United States succeeds in that alliance, in taking away part of the British Empire, in defeating Germany, taking away part of the British Empire, and at the same time in which Stalin consolidates his regime, and then the red tanks roll over Eastern Europe and conquer Eastern Europe for the new Stalinist state. So I think this is a terrible tragedy for the working class.